Hi guys, my name is Wonderful Chineye. I'd like to welcome you again to the channel, and we'll be discussing wisdom as always, but today in a completely new light, right? As you can see, we're doing this podcast from a library. In fact, I love the whole medieval look about this place. It just brings me back a whole lot of nostalgic feelings from when I used to come to the library to read, back in the day. So today, let's talk about education. Alvin Toffler said, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be the man who cannot read and write, rather, to be the man who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." So, what exactly is education? What exactly is education? It means that it has to do with learning, unlearning, and relearning, right? So let's see if we can back it up a while. I studied engineering, and one of those persons who never felt like they were cut out for the course, because I usually showed um, aptitude for a whole, lot of different things like writing, reading. I remember that back in secondary school, I was in SS1 and I was in science class, or sciences as you would have them in this part of the world. But I traded I traded further maths. At some point, I was almost going to trade chemistry just to be in literature class. I knew that I had it in me. I knew that literary works excited me. I knew that I had it in me to be a writer. I knew that I had it in me to be oratorial, to be a great orator. But somehow, because of the climbs where I found myself, I saw that I took up sciences because when we were big hitters in class. Many years after that, the Lord would correct that notion for me using very many things. So that journey began in 2010 when I was in final year. We had a program in our school back then for the final year students, those who identified with the FCS, and it was titled More Than a Certificate. And my good old friend John Apasi, who's now doing very great for himself in the area of sound engineering, he was the speaker at that event, and the event was titled More Than a Certificate. And he began to say that God would be unfair to put all that concerned a man in a piece of paper called a certificate. Because what happened if that man had his certificates burned up, or maybe water, flood, or something? Just some destruction of sorts that took away that certificate. Would that mean that your life was ended? Would that mean that your essence, your value is lost? And the conclusion was that no, man was a masterpiece in his own right. There had to have been a reason why God brought men to have education. So we spent some few minutes considering that when he began to say those things, my head started to spin, because I'd always been concerned to say, why do we have a lot of our universities churning out graduates who are then looking for people to have them employed? And recently, Dr. Sam Adeyemi began to talk about the skewed nature of our educational system. So, the Igbo apprenticeship system functions on, you go to the villages, the rural areas, you pick a boy who doesn't have, um, who is probably just a layabout in the village, you bring him to the city to learn a trade. Of course, he understudies you in the trade that you now are doing, and after a certain number of years, 4 or 5 years, he gets what we call freedom. You let him go, and then he goes to start. You just settle him with a few millions, just depending on the capacity of his supposed boss. He's settled, and the idea is that he goes to start his own craft and become an employer of labor. But the Western educational system is such that if you graduate and then you come back into what we call the labor market to begin to try to work for someone else who has created, our educational systems do not prepare us to create. That's why I call it skewed. Because the essence of education actually is to open up your analytical capacities, your ability to think and to become an astute problem solver. That's the reason we do projects in final year. And I learned that lesson the hard way because my supervisor back in the day, Dr. Okopi Alex Momo, he told me that he was not going to allow me to do project the way others did their projects because his master's degree project got him a job in England. I started thinking, why is somebody giving you a job from a project that he did? I realized that it was because my understanding of the project was in partial fulfillment of the requirements for the award of a degree. But no, a project is literally this university or whatever place you have gone to get some learning, telling you that you should show your learning, you should apply your learning to practical problem solving. So I started to think about it. If everybody who went to the university went about it with the mindset of a problem solver, you then understand that all the things that the school was trying to do to you was to open up your analytical capacities to solve problems. So all the times that you had to stay till daybreak studying, or there was a shotgun test, it was just to tell you that life comes at you whether you are prepared or not. So you have to live ready. Every single thing that was happening to you in the higher institution was just life playing out. So your university project, if you did it well, was supposed to prepare you to become a problem solver in real life. So that the only thing I expected anybody to ever say in this part of the world was that I probably don't have money to implement the project. But now, because we're talking about intangible resources, it means you already have a project which can become a proposal to some other person to say, okay, I did this water treatment project, I did this refrigeration and air conditioning project, I did this XYZ project, and I can apply it in real life. I had XYZ amount because there are lots of NGOs willing to fund projects, but there's a paucity of ideas. There's people are more literally like bereft of ideas because they never applied themselves to think that the reason they went to school was to become a problem solver. Look at mathematics, for instance. I always had issues in mathematics in my secondary school days. I just could never relate. But if you come to think of it, mathematics were just designed to teach you problem solving. That's why all of the things they solve these problems. Take quadratic equation, for instance. So quadratic equation has like three main methods of solving them. Or let's say four, right? You have factorization method, you have completing the square, you have formula method, and finally you have the graphical method. So there are four methods. All of them are going to lead you to the same answer. Just another way to tell you that there are many ways to solve problems. There are many practical approaches to problem solving. That's all you're supposed to learn from quadratic equations. So I have considered the life of people like Mr. Bean, that's Rowan Atkinson. The man has a master's degree in electrical engineering, but none of that could affect him the global acclaim that he got, eventually becoming the face of London 2012 Olympics. How many remember that opening ceremony? I'm sure you should go and look for it on YouTube. It's just absolutely beautiful. The man carved a niche for himself in acting after having studied electrical engineering to master's degree level. Will we turn around and say he wasted his degree? No, because all that going to school did for him was supposed to open up his analytical capacities. The Bible says that there's a spirit in man, and the inspiration of the Almighty giveth him understanding. You already have a spirit in you. So education is that inspiration, that understanding you require to make demands of your spirit and your internal capacities. I continually say that God leaves no man unrewarded. So every single thing, every single man is born with the capacity of source. Education is supposed to make you know how to apply that capacity to earn, because money is literally reward for problem solving. Money is what is given to you when you provide value. So I find it an absurdity, absolute oddity that the person graduates from school and really can tell me that he spent 5 years without a job. You didn't go through the school, actually. If you did, you remember what you studied. Except, of course, you're like some of us who go to study courses that we are not cut out for. And even if you do that, understand that your education was to bring out your analytical capacities. So you should start thinking. That's why you go to the bank and see that the front desk officer, the cashier, the clerk studied engineering, the teller studied biochemistry. The bank started to understand these things, that people's education is just to make them problem solvers. So you can study quantity surveying and come out, and the bank takes you to go and train you in their banking school so that you can become a banker. That's literally how it's supposed to be, because what you're doing going to banking school is what I call the long learning the tongue of the Chaldeans. That's what Daniel and his brethren had to do in Daniel chapter 1. The king said, select me people who are skilled in science, who understand uh, um, literature, who are smart, who are without blemish, so that we can teach them the tongue and learning of the Chaldeans, so that after 3 years they can stand before the king. So there's even a basic requirement that you need to start approaching life to stand before the king. That is your education. You have it, then you're ready to go. But you cannot allow yourself be defined by what you studied in school, because that was just meant to open your analytical capacities. So in case you're like me and you felt like you're an odd person, no, I'm here to tell you today that your academics was just supposed to make you astute at problem solving. So go back, look at your project work. Do you even remember anything you did there? We've had many times where we had to employ, and while doing the recruitment process, we had to ask somebody, what was your final year project? And the guy is stammering, cannot remember. Okay, for the ones that even remember, what are the practical applications to life? They cannot. So if I had an opportunity to be imparting education at any level, like I am, I would want to start by telling you that everything I'm doing is to open up your analytical capacity. The Bible says that in Proverbs, I think chapter 6, it says, I went by the house of the sluggard. I looked and I saw and I applied my heart to wisdom. See, everything in life is supposed to teach you wisdom. That a little sleep, a little slumber, and poverty will come upon you like an armed bandit. There's some wisdom in everything. The problem is, are you applying your heart to wisdom to see these things? Are you applying your heart to see these things? Somebody built the caterpillar company by just watching the caterpillar do its thing. How many other innovations do you know have been built from just applying your heart to understanding things, their functionalities? That's why you are in school. Otherwise, you will graduate and join the teeming millions that are in search of a job. Nigeria's unemployment rate has never been as high as it is now. So there is an outcry, there is a desire for people to come out, who understand how to create and how to innovate on existing processes and create jobs because of the analytical processes that have happened to them in school. So education is just a sum total of happenings in the learning process, a sum total of building blocks in the learning process. That's your education. I hope you've been blessed today. Maybe in another time we might dig deep into this, but I trust that today you go back and say, in what ways can I apply my learning? Why did I go to school? What was I supposed to learn that I didn't learn? Some people go to get higher degrees to make up for what they didn't learn in first degree, and it will never work. Education, education, as defined by Albert Einstein, is that which remains with you long after what was learned in school has been forgotten. See you in the next one.